This is the American Arson Podcast, where our goal is to spark creativity. Whether you're a musician, an artist, a writer, or an entrepreneur, we're here to provide you with tools, tips, and insight from professionals and creatives that you can use to inform and inspire your own journey. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the American Arson Podcast. Today, we have Chris Dyer on, and he is the host of the On the Radar podcast. And it's a really cool music podcast that has a unique format. So we're interested in kind of picking his brain.
Yeah, a good while before the whole coronavirus thing hit, we actually had the opportunity to go down to his studio down there and record some with him. Record an episode. It was really cool. Had us play a live set and then did an interview in studio, which was really unique, something we hadn't done before. But yeah, you'll get to hear more about that from him.
Absolutely. And even if you are not a podcaster or aren't interested in starting a podcast, I think he'll have some good insight into how to find your niche in a crowded market, which is definitely
absolutely
music podcast is definitely a crowded market, and then how to pivot when there's unexpected things like a global pandemic. So,
yeah.
All right, cool.
Minor details.
Yeah, just little things like that. Okay, well, let's jump in with Chris. Well, Chris, how you doing today, man?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Hanging in there.
Yeah.
It's
the Ronas.
Yeah,
the Ronas are running wild.
I know, seriously, and that we're definitely going to talk about that because it seems like it's caused a little bit of a pivot in your show. But before we get to that, you wanna just give everybody a rundown of who you are and what your show is all about.
I'm a loud, bald man out of Toledo, Ohio. I am a radio personality. I have a couple of morning shows. I am the morning show host on our rock station 100.7 The Zone out of Toledo. I do middays 10 a.m. to 3 on our classic rock station Toledo 94.5 XKR. I occasionally hop on and do work on our top 40 station. It's Q105. When I'm not on air, making bad jokes and intro and outroing the same 5 songs you hear every day.
Right.
I am the digital coordinator and assistant promotion director for Cumulus Media in Toledo, Ohio. So I handle the social media, the websites. I help build the promotions, contests, and things like that. When I'm not yakking on the radios, I'm yakking on podcasts, and I host a podcast, which these two fine gentlemen have been on. It's called the On the Radar Podcast. It features music, interviews, and studio performances with acts coming to, through, and from the greater Midwestern areas. I work with a handful of local studios, recording studios out of here in Northwest Ohio and the surrounding areas, and I bring acts in. We kind of get inside the heads of these guys and gals and ask kind of like the why of why they do what they do,
mm-hmm.
and everything. And they play a couple sometimes studio performances. And as Evan said, that with the coronavirus going on, I had to make a slight pivot in the show. So I've been starting to call what I call my home editions, because I'm broadcasting live from my home in Toledo, Ohio, right. in my office. And I've been starting to do more interviews with acts that like the podcast, have met me, or traveling through, or have heard me from somewhere, and they're like, hey, we want to come on, but we can't travel right now due to everything.
Right.
So we do it over Zoom, and then they supply me a track, and then we go from there. So, and that's been kind of interesting. I miss the face-to-face. I miss the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
I've started to do it again with Ohio area bands, but it's very odd, much like everything else going on.
Yeah.
And then when I'm not doing all that, I play with my new puppy. And I'm married, and that's about it. That's me in a nutshell.
Awesome.
The minor things.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long has On the Radar been going on for?
It has gone on for about 3 years now as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, it was a local radio show that I did on our rock station 100.7 Zone. We started with a local promotion company years back. And they were like, hey, we want to, because this radio station, The Zone, has had a history of like coming on and then coming off again due to, money, corporate situations, flip-flopping formats, things like that with radio. So it's come back and gone and come back and gone. And it used to be in a higher frequency, higher power, and bigger reach. And now it's just kind of Metro Toledo.
Okay.
So like back in the heyday, there used to be a local weekly local show. And when I kind of got the reins on it, this is before I was fully into radio and doing on air. I was working with a local promotion company, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do a show. We want to call it On the Radar. We will play music from acts that we're booking that are coming to town, and then we'll hook you up with interviews. We'll do a national artist, and then we'll do a local artist."
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of started building my relationships with the music scenes around here. And then when the radio station went away a few years back, I thought the best idea to continue doing this, and like the promotion company, like within a year of the show, like pulled out because they couldn't pay the bill basically.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily my bosses in corporate were like, yeah, you keep on doing the show. It seems like it's a good following. This is not going to hurt anything. It's 1 hour on a Sunday night at 6. It'll be fine. Excuse me. Ugh. When you talk a lot and then you drink seltzer water, it's kind of a bad idea. So,
the perfect combination. What are you talking
I know,
about?
right? Yeah, I'm a professional. So I decided that like the perfect idea for this, because I'm like concentrating more on like traveling acts, local music, giving these bands a stage. Because at the end of the day, like having your music playing on the radio, no matter how big or small it is a cool.
Yeah.
Like regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I decided to make it a podcast. So I worked with one of the studios, a guy named Steve Warser. He was a great guy. He's worked in bands out of the Midwest. Most recently in a band called Secret Space. It's no longer a thing. And then he has now a new project called Cult Power, and he records bands himself. So I kind of hooked up with him and another guy named Dean Tartaglia. Also Secret Space, now on a project called Rover, and he's also when he's not doing music, he's a PR guy for bands with his company, Little Star PR.
Oh, nice.
So I decided to like bring bands in, and like I love the idea of like those audio tree sessions or the BBC One radio performances in England.
Super cool.
I always love the idea. So like, I'm like, let's bring band in. Let's like kind of talk to them about stuff. Excuse me. And then let's have them record a couple of studio sessions, like these live raw style sessions. And they could be like full band or acoustic or stripped down or something fun or different. And then from there, it's grown from not just Toledo. Then I started reaching out to more bands in a larger area and working with, different labels, Face Down Records. I recently just did some work with Tragic Hero, Take This to Heart, Spartan Records. I've reached out to some of these bands and these labels, In Vogue for a handful of them. Yep. And I go, hi, I'm this guy from Toledo. I want to interview this band. This is what we do. This is the history. Can we do something? Yeah. And sometimes they're like, cool, yeah, let's do something. And sometimes they're like, we're not interested. And then it's just kind of grown and grown. And like now we are 80 some episodes in.
Awesome.
We do like 2 to 3 a month. Okay. We just, we're really trying to get like some more acts and traveling acts. And I work with now 4 different studios out of Northwest Ohio.
Okay.
So like I if one band like kind of works well with one producer, or like if it's a last minute thing, I have like a multitude of people I can contact. So I work with unfortunately I don't work with Steve Warser anymore. Nothing bad happened. It's just he got super busy with his recording schedule. So I was like, hey, that's fine. We still keep in contact. I work with a guy named Pat Sheckett. He has a home studio called Underhill Recordings. Nice. I work with Travis Guyman out of Waterville, who you guys worked with on our episode. Bigfoot Studios.
It was really rad.
Yeah, it was a fun time. And then I work with another studio that's on the rise, a home-based studio. Two guys, Michael Jones and Mark Miller. and they have a rising studio, a home studio called Bike Rack Records. And then I just hooked up with another guy out of Waterville, Ohio, called Laser Light Recording Studio. And it's, again, another like home-based studio. Because a lot of these studios are not like an actual, like, when you think music studio, like studio space.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of home studios.
Yeah. I remember even that one, like in the one that we were in, just being in that building behind a couple, like it was really cool. Like it was definitely, it was a lot more spacious and like really built up inside than you would have like expected just driving down that little alleyway and going right past it. You would never know that there was that whole studio right inside that little backdoor building.
It was super cool. And when I first met Travis, like that's his second studio space. His first studio space when I first met him was in his family's home in the basement.
Yep.
Like and
then
from there
yep.
it grew. And then like just this past weekend on this the time of this recording, like just this past weekend, I was in Cleveland, Ohio, working with the good people at Tragic Hero Records and their studio space, because in that building, it's like a big office building, and they have a big room that's the recording studio it's called for Superior Sound. And then they have their offices for like Tragic Hero and their classic rock label and Take This to Heart. And then like a kitchen space area and a lounge area. Like it was super nice. Like
Super
that was
cool.
like when you think music studio, you think you go to that, like you go to a building, it's like this huge space and a giant board and like everything.
Yeah.
It was a really cool experience. I'm very excited to release that episode in a couple of weeks.
That's awesome.
So
that is awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the music podcast landscape, it's very saturated. Obviously there's tons of music podcasts, and then even within subgenres, there are so many music podcasts. And I think one of the things that really makes On the Radar stand out is that live performance aspect. You said you kind of drew on inspiration from Audio Tree and things like that. Was it an intentional decision to try to differentiate yourself from other music podcasts out there, or was it just something that seemed cool at the time?
Both. I love the idea of, and not only that, and just like radio stations nowadays don't have like artists come in and do like live studio performances unless you're like a bigger station.
Yeah.
So like being a radio guy, I barely have that opportunity to do that. Now I've started to do that on my morning show pre-coronavirus. I bring in a local artist in, and it's usually like a small setup. Or if it's a band, it's like 4 guys sharing a couple of 3 microphones, but like everything's acoustic, or like a very small amp that it's not too loud, so like another studio is not going to get any complaints that I'm playing music. And even that idea is just like so foreign to them nowadays in radio modern times. Like you expect that in like LA and Chicago and New York and like the big station, not like Toledo, Ohio, some Midwest, area. You don't expect like live music on the radio. Like what? That's wild. So I love that idea. So when I decided to make the podcast, I was like, I love the idea of like live performances. Like I want to have the idea of like, if you're going to see these people live, what in the realm would they sound like? Because an album is it can be at times so hyper, perfect.
Yes.
That like is almost too clean.
Yeah.
And you lose kind of that rawness. There's nothing wrong with that. The album is like your best foot forward is your digital business card. It is your business card. Like, hey, we're a band. This is our music. Like that, and it's the same as a business card.
This is what we can do. Here's what we're capable of, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided that I'm like, I want that raw feel, and I wanted to be audio. And I'm a purist when it comes to podcasts because I don't necessarily go the video route. While it could benefit what our podcast it does, it would only, in my opinion, benefit the audio, like the performance part, not necessarily the talking part. And a lot of people like will still do video podcasts with talking and everything, and that's fine because you want to see the people's emotions. You want to see the weird hand motions that I've been doing throughout this talking.
or
you
your
want to
awesome
see the background
posters, yeah.
or my
Yeah,
awesome posters in the background of all the goofy, nerdy shit I have. But at the same time, like I got into radio for the audio. I truly believe that if you strip everything away and you just have the message, you are concentrating more on the message. It doesn't matter who is saying it, what their influence is, how much money they make, what they look like. It doesn't matter. You're hearing the message. And that's why radio is important to me. Not only that, and just the music platform as well. The combination of just like, you have music and then talk and then the message that you have to pay attention to and listen and concentrate and see what they're doing on. And it's, and you have to be a decent talker to be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you have all that combination. So when you move that to a podcast platform, you want to stand out. Everybody can review an album. Everybody like can talk with a band. So how do you make your product, my podcast? How do I stand on the radar off in its own? Well, we got a weird, loud, bald guy who calls himself a vegetable talking to rad dudes and dudettes about things. And then we have, a couple of cool performances in the middle of the podcast. Like in an hour podcast, you'll have like 20, 25 minutes talk, 3-minute song, more talk, another song, and then the end.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever find that bands are resistant just because, like you said, the industry is moving more and more towards a polished product, and something when I grew up that might have been called overproduced back then now would just be totally normal. And so as a band, there might be a little bit of consternation when I'm going in here to record this. I don't have a whole lot of shots at it. It's essentially going to be a live version of what I can do. Are there bands that are concerned with that, or have you not really found that?
I found that a couple of bands that are a little concerned about it. Even in minor talks when I'm trying to set up an interview, I tell them what we do and what we expect. And they're like, our band, doesn't really necessarily do live. Can we just throw you a track? I only do that as like a last ditch effort.
Right.
And that's usually for a band that's like, time-wise wouldn't make it out or whatever, or like in the style of my home editions that I do over Zoom, they can't studio perform over Zoom. I mean, you can try, but it'll just sound like shit.
Yeah.
So I rather have like a track that they choose and that they feel comfortable supplying with, and then we'll go from there. And that's fine by me. But a lot of bands are sometimes a little iffy about the idea. But at the same time, like if you're willing to play this music in front of people, why us recording a live cut of you doing it be such an issue?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, people would be more than happy to like perform, but they're scared to death to talk.
Really?
It's super quiet. Oh my God. So it's so funny to me how many people get overly nervous. And this is just in general, doing an interview on radio or doing a podcast about things. And radio, they think it's really big, and it can be intimidating. But what I'm, hopefully this doesn't sound egotistical, but like I'm very fortunate that I've had people when they've done interviews with me, they go, I felt very comfortable with you. Yeah. Because the way we're talking should be the same way as the interview on radio.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing? What's your product? What's your thing? Tell me about it. And you're like, oh, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
I was going to say that's one thing I remember when we came down and did that podcast of like how well it was done in terms of feeling conversational. And I was just talking to Evan about this actually when we were talking about, kind of starting this podcast and like the different podcasts we listen to or the different radio shows we listen to of like, I prefer to hear that more natural conversational kind of tone. And even that, and I was going to ask like, even with that and keeping that kind of a natural feel with it, still being able to dig into kind of the deeper stuff. And I remember like when we were there, some of the questions you asked us were a little deeper than your typical surface level, like, oh, so you're a two-piece, what's that like?
Right.
Which like obviously, like, we covered all the basics. We covered the, like, who are your top influences, like the cool, neat little facts that people want to hear, but that you get asked all the time, but still we're able to dive into kind of more what's behind the music, like you were saying, the message, and like, whether it was our, mental experiences or personal experiences, emotional, spiritual, or whatever it may be, and dive past kind of the surface level stuff. Was that something you knew kind of through your experience and going into this that you wanted to do through the show too, of like, give people the little tidbits of interesting information about the artist, but also kind of peel the curtain back a little bit more than normal?
I had a problem when I first started, that I was doing my podcast interviews, like radio interviews, like short, sweet, kind of get to the point,
Right.
and not like, and it was very like question, answer, very stiff.
Yeah.
Which radio is, and it was actually thanks to doing more and more podcasting, we actually developed my on-air style more. So I'm not as stiff, I'm more relaxed, and thankfully, like in the genres that I do most of my work with on radio, I could be a little bit more flexible on time. So if I'm going on a point with something interesting or something ridiculous or whatnot, I can go minute and a half, 2 minutes tops. But like if I'm on my top 40 station, 1 minute chunk, get to the meat and potatoes, get in, get out.
Yeah.
With the podcast and what Jesse said, that I wanted to, the more I did it, the more I was developed, the more I wanted to like needle in. And I don't know when I started doing more needling in. I think it was like after a year. I was talking to some of the acts, and like they were getting on a subject, and I kind of just like kept pushing and pushing and pushing and see where I can go and see what I can do. And now maybe I'm giving away some of the secrets a little bit, but I want to know some of the things that make you squirm a little bit. Some of the things that you're okay, because like it gives you a more fleshed out idea of who this person is, who's this act, who's this person, and why should I care?
Right.
And it fleshed it out. Like the act that I just did recently, a band called Morning in May out of Cleveland, they were super excited that at the end of it they were like, thank you for asking us good questions.
Yeah.
Because like they were so used to, like you said, like the same, like, oh, where did you grow up? What's your favorite color? What do you like to eat? And while some of those things are interesting, like I'll always ask about like the origins of the band, because duh. But then I started asking, like, why do music? Why do this brand? Why talk about this? Why go to the why? Because what is the reason for all of this stuff? Why did you decide to do something, take an idea out of your head and put it to pen, paper, iPad, whatever, and then put tones to it, put beats to it, and then put it out in the world?
Yeah.
There is a point where you decided to take an idea and put yourself out there in such a vulnerable state. So I want to know, why did you do that? Why did you put yourself out there? And what are the reasons behind it? Because if the more and more people want to know some of the background, the deep background of what your stuff is, I feel like the more and more reason they'll go, I want to check these guys out.
Yeah.
I want to listen to this album. Yeah. I want to pre-order it. I want to do this. I want to see them live. I want to support the shirt. I want to support, especially being artists in the Midwest and entertainers in the Midwest, where we already get a bad rap because apparently we were just covered in corn.
Yeah.
We are filled with so much artistic capabilities that nobody would know until you break out more. Guys like Slipknot or 21 Pilots or whatever, they're on these small little corn-fed towns and nobody gives a shit about.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they blow up and everybody's like, oh, they're from Ohio? Pfft, whatever. Ohio. Huh?
Yeah.
You know, but no, it's more than that. It's that's why I wanted to like needle my way in and try to get more into and make and see the nuts and bolts and see how the sausage is made, because I wanted to know where we can go and why the music strikes such a chord with people, and it should strike a chord in some sort of fashion.
So do you intentionally then choose guests to come on where you feel like there's something behind the curtain? Because obviously this is not to disparage, genres or types of music, but there are some people who make music strictly to entertain, and that is the purpose of that music. And there's not a whole lot behind the curtain. And that's what they think about when they create a song, is how can I get the most people to listen to this? And then there's other artists who are extremely thoughtful with what they put in to to their songwriting. So does that come into play when you're selecting guests?
I like to select guests that are doing something. They're moving the needle in some sort of fashion. Maybe they recently got signed. Maybe they're getting a lot more followers. Maybe they're on tour. Maybe they're doing something. I want to know why they're moving the needle. Again, that's the big question of why I'm doing this. It's the why. Now, sometimes I have reached out to acts that I've heard like the stories and whatnot, and I want to know why, and I want to put them to light. One of the best ones that I've done, one of my top favorites because of content wise, not just because of guest or clout or whatnot, just content wise, was a guy named Ashley Nunley. He goes under the stage name with his band Paco is Desperate.
Yeah.
He is a recovered heroin addict, legally died for 5 minutes while overdosing on heroin.
Oh my gosh.
And I knew somewhat of the story about him. Like I only heard like rumors and whatnot. And I want to know this story. I want to put his story out there. I want not only because his music was good, is because I also really wanted to tell the tale. I don't know necessarily when this is coming out, but maybe by the time it's come out, I recently did a home edition with a band out of Chicago called Broken Robots. Come to find out, which I did not know about this going in until I maybe started researching a little bit. The 2 out of the 3 members of the band, the husband and wife in the trio, are convicted felons due to drugs.
Wow.
And they were arrested and had to do time, and they had to convicted. They're felons technically in the eyes of the law. They're felons, but they put out some incredible music, and their story was beautiful. And I wanted the more and more we talked about it, it was less about the music, but more about their story and their stance. And in this political and social climate, I thought it was a perfect timing. I didn't go into it going, these guys are going to tell a great story or whatever. No, I just go, these guys are rad. Their music's rad. This is kind of interesting. I want to dive more into it. Lo and behold, I got an incredible interview that I was not, my expectations were through the roof. And I have pretty solid expectations with every guest.
Right.
and I want to know more. When I my buddy Ryan, introduced me to you guys, I listened to music. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Let's get them on there.
These guys are all right.
Yeah.
They're okay.
Yeah, these guys are all right. I got super excited when I got the email today that the pre-sale stuff has shipped. I'm like, yes.
Well, thank you for supporting us, man. We appreciate that.
Of course. And
Thank you.
and I wanted to I get every guest on here. It's not always because they like to reach out to me or label clout or whatever. I think something is interesting about here. There's something that's sparking my interest. And whether they've been a band for decades or whether they've just a new project that's kind of, gained some popularity, I want to know more, because in the end of the day, I'm a fan and I want to do more and I want to support, and I'll buy the t-shirt, I'll buy the album, whatever. I think it's super cool to do some of that stuff. And I'm glad, because, if I want to know why I'm reaching out, because I want to learn more. And then in doing so and recording that and then putting that out on a platform, I'm hoping that at least one other person will go, this is interesting. I want to check out more about these guys and what they did. And then if they like what they heard, or they like the answers, or there's something in the episode that gained you another listener, another t-shirt bought, something like that, then I've done my job. It's the idea of like, and I've been saying this phrase so much as of late, rising tides raises all ships.
Yeah.
Because your success will become my success, which will become somebody else's success. Like, it's all interconnected. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to just get something out there, because everything is so saturated, and everybody's doing a podcast nowadays, and everybody's doing a music podcast or whatever. But you got to do at least a little bit of something to kind of be interesting enough for people to stop and go, I'm going to give you my hour of my time.
Yeah, absolutely.
To listen.
Yeah, I know I personally am subscribed to a whole bunch of podcasts, and there's just not enough time in the day to listen to all of them, especially now that I don't have my hour, which is doubled to turn into 2 hours commute every day. It's a little bit more difficult. But I think one thing that we experience a lot as a band is sort of rooted in the whole like shut up and play kind of thing, is that we have this pull where we know we've got 30 minutes on the stage, and if we use 5 minutes over the course of that 30 minutes talking, that's 25 minutes, that we get to play.
That's a whole song that we have to cut.
That's 5 minutes out. That's 25 minutes of music that we get to play. Whereas if we don't talk, then we've got 30. So, as bands, and I know I've talked to other bands like this, and we've done this a lot. We talk about how can we minimize the amount of time that we are saying things into the microphone and let the music sort of speak for itself. But then you get these questions, you get people that are interested in asking. I know when we were on with you, you were asking about the messages behind some of our songs, and we get an opportunity to share that. And I know as a music fan, I want to know what's behind the songs. And so when when you're willing to ask those pointed questions and drive a little bit deeper, sometimes it's stuff that bands just really haven't got an opportunity to talk about very much, because it's not going to happen on the stage unless you're willing to sacrifice that playtime. Even
sometimes after the stage, like we may have people that come up to our merch table and like chat a little more. Like, in fact, we make it a point to like one of the couple small tidbits that we do talk in our set is telling people to come hang out with us after, come meet us, come have a conversation with us. But even then, like, you're in a music video, chances are we weren't the last band that played, so then music starts again. So like you can maybe dive a little deeper into like meeting someone, getting their name, like having them ask you like, oh, I loved this song, like what's this, that really touched me because of this, which is really cool. But we don't, like you said, get to dive as deep into that as maybe we would want, love to, explain to people that are interested or that want to hear. So it's really cool to have, especially podcasts like yours, where like you said, you want to needle a little more, you want to get behind, the meaning and the message, like that allow us to kind of let that out, and then are able to say like, hey, we can have these individual conversations and explanations with people, but we can also point them in the direction of this really cool podcast interview that we just did that just,
now we don't have to answer the same question 50 times.
Just exactly.
Go listen to the podcast.
Like somebody messages us, what's this song about? You know what? Just go watch this video. No, well, like, I mean, that's not always the situation, but it does like give us that ability to point people in the direction of like, we can have a conversation, and hey, if you want to hear even more about it, we can't talk to you for an hour, but we talked to Chris for an hour. So like, go check that out. Like, so it is really, really useful, even on a practical sense.
It's the idea of bands that need to shut up and play is nonsense to me. I think every band needs to stand for something, especially now.
Yeah.
I found it funny that like real people are getting upset because of Rage Against the Machine's lyrics, and I'm like, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Clearly.
What do you think? What machine do you think they were raging against? The
I saw
dishwasher.
someone that had screenshotted like a thread of comments where someone had commented on one of their videos of like a live performance where he was just like speaking out against stuff, and they're like something. I'm paraphrasing, like I can't remember the exact wording. I'd have to look back at the meme. Someone had just like quoted the meme, was literally, it just said LOL, and it was a live Rage Against the Machine video, and they're like, did this guy just stop talking so much? Like, just play your music, like you're a musician. When did you become a politician? And someone underneath it was like, have you ever listened to this band before?
Right.
Like,
it's just so ridiculous. And like now, like everything is so hypersensitive. And I'm not saying like it's PC culture and everything. I think we should have absolute rights for people and races and sexualities and everything, as long as it's not hurting anybody or hindering somebody else's process or progress in anything. I think we should talk about it. But in the era of social media, everybody wants to paint everything in one broad stroke. And it's not always the case. Every situation is different. Every situation needs a different set of eyes and everything. And the Twitter mob mentality. And I know and Twitter's notorious for canceling quote unquote people. And sometimes it is worth it. Hey, this person's being a scumbag, or hey, this person said something years ago but has now changed and make sure that they didn't say it again. They can openly say, yeah, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I want to learn from it and move on. And I feel like everybody should at least get, in most cases, there's an asterisk with that, there's most cases, everybody should get a second chance to better themselves. But if you keep falling into the same rhythm, then okay, then yes, you can get canceled, whatever. But the idea of just like not being able to vocalize what you feel, because obviously we all want to go out and go, you see what the fuck is going on in this world? Our government's shit. People are getting killed for no fucking reason. People can't get equal rights. We have a global pandemic. We want to go out on our porch and fucking yell into the world about it. And I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to cuss or whatnot. I just
you're fine.
You're good.
But
You're
that's
totally
fine. But instead of doing that, instead of us just going nuts and just yelling, we harness that energy. We put lyrics and metaphors and things into it, and jams and riffs and beats and whatnot, and then we put out something to not only is therapy for us, but it could be therapy for somebody else to feel what's going on, so they can kind of possibly connect the dots. And then if you want to dive in more, you can dive in more, whether it's a podcast interview, whether it's a one-on-one conversation and everything. And then you can express more about what's going on, and communication builds and builds and builds. The face-to-face communication is unfortunately starting to become a lost art. Zoom like this, especially during this pandemic, helps okay, but like you don't get necessarily, you lose something without being in front of everybody.
Yeah.
You lose that kind of that energy you're feeding off of, and that face to face, and not in like necessarily a bad way, feeding off of each other in an angrily way, but you just you harness the room and you see how people talk. Zoom or like these online conversations are not bad because it makes you stop and listen to what they're saying and kind of maybe develop your idea and what you think is the, how you're going to react to what they're going to say. And then maybe, go off of that. There's good and bad things about everything. And don't get me wrong, social media is a great tool for what it is, but at the end of the day, it's a tool, much like a hammer, at the end of the day, you're not going to hammer everything. I mean, you can, but it's not going to do the great job.
Might not work out for you.
Yeah, exactly. So social media should not be the end all be all about everything. I've tried more and more now to post less and less about serious things, because it doesn't matter what I'm going to say. Somebody's going to read it in a different tone coming from their point of view, and they're not going to understand where I'm coming from, and then it'll be a whole big fucking thing. And
it's very reactionary. It's,
exactly.
People don't in the same way, I guess they don't in person, but much more so. There's a lot less thinking before speaking, or thinking through, okay, this is where this person's coming from, or maybe where are they coming from and why would they have said this. And like you said, like I think it's important, like it can do some good, like it gives some people a voice maybe to speak out against certain issues, or to bring certain scumbags to light that maybe wouldn't have gotten the attention, or especially we see the celebrity culture where someone comes out that had been suppressed for so long but now is able to get the word out via social media. But at the same time, like on a much smaller scale, when it's just people like you, me, Evan, whoever, like posting on our personal accounts, like just day-to-day stuff, like you have someone that maybe posts something about a certain matter that's going on, and then all of a sudden there's hundreds of comments of people just lashing out at each other, and not even intelligently, not like hey, I strongly disagree with you, here's why I think you're wrong, but in a very inhumane kind of like,
Yeah. Do you find that most artists are excited to dive a little bit deeper and peel that layer back, or is that sometimes uncomfortable?
I'm always the type of person with the mentality, if something is uncomfortable, it's because nobody's done it before. So if my interviews or my questioning is making someone uncomfortable, I mean, that's not my intention, but at the same time, that's how you grow. It's got out of get in those uncomfortable spots and learn more about it. I feel like people are excited. They like, whether they've learned secondhand of my work, or they're a fan of my work, or they just want to be me being part of the PR machine nowadays. That, I'm starting to get more and more emails, and I'm on like PR lists for, press releases for artists. And
that's awesome.
They may, and then, I may have interest in them, or I may not. It's a lot harder right now because nobody's traveling and nobody's moving around. So I won't have an opportunity to contact these people on their, tour or whatnot. But I hope to feel that they're excited to do something. And I feel like, if you're going to talk more about what they're doing, and at the end of the day, people want to talk about themselves and talk about their art, whether it's, radio, podcasting, music, physical art, their passion or whatever. I when I first started doing the podcast, I wasn't a fan of podcasting because then I was too busy listening on how they produce their stuff and not necessarily what the content was.
Okay.
And then later I started to turn that kind of that little thing inside of my head off, and I kind of just like rolled the punches. So I listened to a lot more like potpourri type stuff. I listen to a lot of my friends and their podcasts that, while in my professional realm of listening to sounds for a living and talking around sounds, may not be the best, it's still entertaining to me because A, I want to support them, and B, I think it's super fun. Yeah. I listen to that, and I also listen to like a lot more like pro wrestling related things because I'm a fan, or I recently got hip to an old pro wrestler that I was a fan of on the independent scene, and I actually really kind of interacted with him on the internet, and then he's gotten a job with the World Wrestling Entertainment now, and I thought it was super cool. And a buddy of mine like got to work with him on one summer internship, and he saw a photo of me and him together, and they're like, wait, you two know each other? And apparently that wrestler remembered me from the independent days.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So like I listened to it. He started a new podcast about relationship stuff with his real life girlfriend, who's also a pro wrestler. So I thought it was super cool.
Huh. Yeah, there's a niche. There's a niche that probably hasn't been covered. Two pro wrestlers talking about relationship issues. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's super fun, and it's just stuff like that. It gets to the point where I like to just like turn myself off from things and just like kind of laugh around, or like have white noise when I'm working on behind the scenes stuff for the radio station, some data entry things, some boring things that. When you think in the world of radio, it's more than just being on air. There's a lot more things and moving parts to it, and some are not glamorous. excuse me, some of the things that, they may not tell you when someone wants to get into radio. They think, oh, I'm going to get radio, I'm going to talk for a living, and I'm just going to go. And boy, is that wrong. And I've been in the industry for 11 years. It'll be 11 years this August. And boy, have I've done so much to the point where and there's still so much more I can do, but I've learned every skill to hone myself more. And then I use those skills for podcasting and radio. I've become almost like a bridge, because radio is very structured. And podcasting is kind of the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of the bridge between the two, because I have this structured mentality, but I'm going into a world with no structure. So I'm kind of free forming it. It's like Play-Doh. It's it's like audio Play-Doh. That's what I'm creating right now. And I'm creating a shape into something that's more solid. So I can bring my structuredness, my so-called professionalism, the sound quality, and how I, interwoven those, audio songs in between talking, or find a certain good stopping point in the episode to play a song and then kind of dive into it. Just the flow of it seems a little bit easier in a sense.
Yeah. Well, awesome. As we kind of start to wind down a little bit here, if you could talk to somebody who's interested, and like you said, everybody's got a podcast now. A lot of people are starting podcasts or YouTube channels, or different creative outlets like that. If you could speak to somebody who is interested in starting maybe a podcast, whether it's about music or something else, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's in that boat?
First off, just do it.
Yeah.
Because what's it gonna hurt?
Right. Yeah.
Don't get caught up in comparing your project with somebody else's project that they've done it a long time.
Okay.
You want to, and I know that's hard. I know that's absolutely hard, and I struggle with that. You're going to find your audience, your niche, your style. You're not going to do it in the first episode. Hell, you're not even going to do it probably in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it on a weekly, if you do it like a weekly show or a weekly podcast or a monthly podcast, I could probably, if I really, really wanted to or tried to do, I could probably do my podcast on a weekly basis. But there's so many moving parts to it. There's no way in hell I could do it. So that's why I go, yeah, we have 2 to 3 episodes a month. Some will have more episodes per month, some we don't. And then on lulls of episodes, I try to make sure I connect very well. Ask people for help to get yourself off the ground.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to reach out and collaborate with other creators and other things. A lot of people will turn your way because you're so brand new, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep building at it, and if you care enough for something like you're doing, whether it's a project, a podcast, a video, a YouTube, or whatever, if you care enough for it and you put the time and energy into it, it's going to show from people. People are going to know that you care about it, the energy and whatnot. All you can do is keep going. And then if it gets too much of a burden for some sort of reason, due to money, energy, time, or whatnot, don't be afraid to break away as well and give yourself a mental break and take a break, take a season break,
mm-hmm.
Things like that. If what you're doing and creating is no longer fun for you and it feels like more of a job, then I don't think it's worth it. And to be honest, because then you're going to start losing something about it.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if you become more popular and you gain more listenership, sponsorships, things like that, don't let those sponsorships change the way you want to perform. A perfect example, I was a big fan of Epic Mealtime way back in the day when they first started with those ridiculous stuff, those videos. Then I got turned off real fast because then every product they made or every concoction they did was with their brand of stuff. And as much as I'm for brand integration, it just became a giant commercial.
Yeah.
And I lost interest in it. And it was all about how they wanted to pimp out their products, their sponsors' products, or what like that. I'm not saying don't take the money. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm also saying that don't let the money dictate how you do your show.
That's great advice.
You know, if you want to keep doing, you want to keep that energy, that raw passion behind it, people will float to that honesty, that realness. And it shouldn't matter if you have one viewer or thousands of viewers, if you make $1 or thousands of dollars. If what you're putting out is not real, or as real as you could do it at this point in time, people are going to find out, and they're going to be turned off real fast.
That's great advice. Awesome.
That's good advice, not just for like podcasters or radio people too. Like you said, I think that can apply to, you know, any creative outlet really. I think even, I mean, relating to us, like even as bands, like if you're starting out as a band, like you said, that one of the first things you said there, like struck home is, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like you're going to get rejected so many times. I think even now, like, I guess you would consider us a slightly more established band, but like even now too, like when we book a tour, I mean, we have more connections now in certain areas, but lots of times we have to go through towns or try and book a show in a place we still haven't been to before, or maybe have only been to once or twice. And it's still a few to several dozen emails before we get someone that says, yeah, we'll do the show. Like we'll have the show, you know, we'll put it on, like we'll do this, or like, you know, a promoter that's willing to help make the show happen, or a venue that's willing to even let you just play, you know. And so that's something that's been a process for me, is having to learn, like, you know what, just send the email anyway, just send the text anyway, just ask anyway. Like you may get no's all across the board, but when you finally get that yes, or you finally do pull something off, it's going to feel even better then. But that's great advice for anyone looking to start any kind of creative endeavor, I feel like.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on with us today. And if people are looking to hear more from you and connect with you, where can they find you?
You can check out the On the Radar podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's at On the Radar PC. We are on all major podcast platforms. So your Apple Podcasts, your Google Podcasts, your Spotify, your et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, subscribe through those, and, you know, invite your friends and leave a comment if you can. It just helps us. And, you know, every connection you make, it will just better not only yourself but others. And I'm deeply honored that you two have reached out to me, and for me to be on the guest spot this time around, and flipping the script, which is always fine.
We'll have to come back down and do something once things are back to normal.
Done. Yeah. Let me know. We'll make something happen again.
Awesome.
More than happy to. Congratulations on all the success, guys, and very happy and very honored that you guys took time out to talk to me, and I was able to talk to you guys, and I can't wait for more from you guys.
For sure, man.
So absolutely.
All right,
we can't wait for you to hear the record.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's on the way. So, all right. Well, it was great talking again, and hopefully we'll be able to connect in person sometime soon.
Absolutely.
All right. See you soon.
See
you, dude.
Thank you for listening to the American Arson Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a positive comment or review. Connect with us online through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, and check out AmericanArson.com for music, merch, and upcoming tour dates. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, stay inspired, stay positive, and keep creating.